The exile and the stranger. Cale Roran had long stopped counting the years since he laid down his rifle as a bounty hunter. The desert moons blurred time. One sunrise bled into the next, and the only rhythm left to his life was the slow grinding of wind over sand and the quiet hiss of his water recycler at night. He had chosen exile, far from Earth, far from war zones, far from names he couldn't forget. His outpost, just a slab of sunburnt alloy and scrap nestled between two red rock buttes, was forgotten by most. A place where even the law refused to look. That's why Cale was here. To be left alone. To forget. But fate had other plans. It began with a noise he hadn't heard in months. A crash. Not an echo or a falling dune, but something real, something heavy. It came from the southern ridge. Cale didn't hesitate. His reflexes, dulled by solitude but not dead, kicked in. He grabbed his old sidearm, slung his faded poncho over his shoulder, and climbed aboard his sand skiff. By the time he reached the ridge, the twin suns had begun to dip low, painting the dunes in blood and gold. The crash site was small, smoldering. Not a ship, but a glider, fast, civilian, and half buried in the sand like a dying bird. The cockpit was open. She was lying just a few meters away. Her cloak was torn, her skin sunburned, and one leg twisted beneath her. But even in that battered state, she clutched something to her chest, a small obsidian pendant etched with a crescent moon. She blinked at him once, then collapsed. Cale didn't ask questions. He carried her to the skiff, her body light and limp in his arms. She stirred once, murmuring a word he didn't understand. Her breath was shallow, and her body radiated heat. Heat stroke. Infection. Maybe worse. Back at the outpost, Cale laid her on the cot and got to work, cooling her body, cleaning her wounds, injecting a stim pack into her arm. The moment she stirred again, she jolted upright with a gasp, reaching for a weapon she didn't have. Easy, Cale said, raising his hands. You're safe. For now. She blinked, eyes wild with confusion. Where am I? Edge of dust fire. My outpost. You crashed. The woman's gaze scanned the room. Makeshift medical table, water tanks, desert maps pinned to walls with old bullet casings. Her eyes landed on him, narrowing. You're Cale Roran. He stiffened. You know my name? I know your reputation, she said, voice hoarse. They called you the Ghost Hunter. That was a long time ago. She coughed, tried to sit up straighter. So they say. Cale stared at her a moment, then offered her a flask of water. She took it warily but drank. Her hands were cracked from exposure. Her clothes, a traveler's cloak and desert wraps, were expensive but worn and dust-covered. What's your name? He asked. She hesitated. Celine. He waited for more, but she gave nothing else. All right, Celine. You've got a fractured ankle, sun poisoning, and a concussion. Rest. I can't stay here, she said quickly. He'll find me. Who? Silence. Then, bitterly, the one I was supposed to marry. Cale raised an eyebrow, but didn't press. He'd seen enough runaway brides on backworld colonies. Most returned in chains, some not at all. But Celine didn't look like someone running from love. She looked like someone running from death. You won't last a day out there, Cale said. Stay. Recover. She stared at him again, long and hard, as if measuring something deep within him. I heard you turned your back on the guild. Said you wouldn't hunt anymore. I'm not in the killing business. Then why help me? Cale didn't answer at first. He turned toward the window, where the twin moons were beginning to rise, casting long shadows over the dunes. Something about her, the pendant, her defiance, her pain, stirred something in the place he'd long thought dead. Because I know what it's like to run from ghosts, he said finally. And I know what it's like to wish someone had helped you before the killing started. She said nothing, but her eyes softened. Outside, the wind howled like a warning. And far beyond the dunes, a convoy of black-armored riders began tracking a trail toward Cale's forgotten outpost. The chase across the sands. The desert didn't wait for anyone. Not for hunters, not for brides, and certainly not for second chances. Cale had seen the dust trail at dawn. It coiled on the horizon like a snake, kicked up by engines. Fast, armored, and heading straight for the outpost. He knew that kind of movement. Not nomads. Not traitors. These were professionals. Killers. He'd been one of them once. Inside the outpost, Celine had managed to limp across the room, using a makeshift crutch. Her face was pale, lips cracked, but her eyes were sharp. She watched him strap on his rifle with grim understanding. "They found me." Cale didn't answer. He handed her a small satchel, water, dried meat, a heat shield. "We have to go. Now." Celine tightened the strap of her cloak. "You should leave me behind. You don't owe me anything." "That's true," Cale said, guiding her toward the sandskiff parked behind the outpost. "But I've got nothing worth saving here either." They sped off minutes later, the skiff cutting over the dunes like a blade. Cale didn't look back, but he felt the heat as the outpost exploded. Someone had rigged charges. He kept his focus forward, his hands steady on the controls. Celine winced with every bump, her injured leg barely braced. "I'm sorry," she said over the wind. "For what?" "For bringing death to your door." Cale shrugged. "Wasn't much of a home, and I've made enough enemies to know, sooner or later, someone always comes knocking." As they cut through a canyon pass, Celine finally opened up. "His name is Dren. Marshal Dren. He governs the eastern sands with mercenaries and fear. My father promised me to him to keep our clan's trade routes safe. But Dren killed my brother in secret, so he'd have no rivals." Cale glanced at her. "You've got courage, running from a man like that." "I didn't run to survive. I ran to find something." She touched the pendant at her neck. "The moon altar, a sacred place from my people's past. If I can reach it, I can claim sanctuary. Even Dren can't violate that law." Cale frowned. "That's just a legend." Celine looked at him then, not with anger, but with a kind of knowing. "So, is redemption," Cale roaring. "But you're still chasing it." He didn't respond. They stopped by an old ruin before nightfall. Crumbled stone arches, wind-worn statues of forgotten warriors, and a cracked cistern with just enough water to refill their canteens. Cale set up a perimeter alarm while Celine rested. By the firelight, they shared a meal. Silence stretched long, but it wasn't uncomfortable. "Why did you stop hunting?" she asked quietly. Cale stared into the fire. "I killed a boy." Celine looked up, but said nothing. "Accident," he continued. "Didn't check the bounty deep enough. Thought he was a raider leader. He was just some kid who took the name to impress his gang. And the guild didn't care? They paid me double." Cale tossed a twig into the flames. "I walked away that day. Buried the rifle in the dunes. Swore I'd never hunt again." Celine reached across the fire and gently touched his hand. "You didn't bury the rifle." He met her gaze. "No," he admitted. "I dug it back up when you fell into my life." In that moment, something shifted. A connection, fragile but real, between two people who'd lost more than they could say. Their faces drew closer, breath-catching, and the alarm trilled. Cale jumped up, rifle raised. Lights on the perimeter pulsed red. "They're here," he said. "Too fast." Celine pulled herself up, pain flashing in her eyes. "Go. Leave me. By time." He turned to her, voice cold and steady. "I don't run anymore." They moved quickly. Cale fired 2 shots at incoming bikes, hitting tires and scattering the formation. He threw a flash charge, grabbed Celine, and dove with her into a narrow crevice behind the ruins. The mercs swarmed the campsite moments later, confused by the firelight and decoys. In the shadows, Celine whispered, "They'll keep hunting us." Cale nodded. "Then we keep moving." She gripped his hand. "You don't have to protect me." He looked into her eyes. "Yes, I do." And as the night deepened, they slipped into the dunes like ghosts, 2 fugitives bound by secrets, grit, and something neither dared call love. Yet. The price of redemption. The desert was quiet after the storm. Cale and Celine had been traveling for 3 days through the canyon passes, sleeping in short bursts and riding by moonlight. Every dune they crossed felt like one step closer to salvation or a trap. The dust clung to them like guilt, and the heat baked silence between their conversations. They didn't speak often anymore. They didn't have to. On the 4th morning, Cale spotted the nomads. Dozens of them, clothed in shifting sand-colored cloaks, armed with curved blades and pulse rifles. Their long-eyed lizards snarled as Cale slowed the skiff. Celine's hand found the pendant at her chest. "They won't kill us," she whispered. "They're the guardians of the altar." Cale raised both hands as they were surrounded. "We're not enemies." An older woman stepped forward, her face veiled in gold mesh, her voice a rasp of age and command. "You travel with the Moon Bride." Celine nodded. "I am Celine Vera, daughter of Clan Vera, blood of the altar." A murmur spread through the crowd. One of the warriors stepped forward with a blade drawn, but he didn't strike. Instead, he knelt. "You seek the moon altar?" the elder asked. "I do," Celine said, "by right of blood and by the law of the old sand." "You may go," the elder said slowly, "but the prophecy must be fulfilled." Kale tensed. "What prophecy?" The elder turned to him. "That the Moon Bride will come with her hunter, and that one must die for the other to rise." Kale's heart tightened. Celine looked away, jaw clenched. "She knew," he said quietly. "You knew the legend." "I didn't come for sacrifice," she said. "I came for freedom." Kale nodded, though something cold settled in his chest. That night, they camped with the nomads. Music drifted through the dunes, soft flutes, low drums. Celine sat across from him, firelight dancing in her eyes. "They think you're the hunter from the prophecy," she said. "Maybe I am." "You're not," she said firmly. "You've already paid your price." Kale chuckled dryly. "Not sure the universe agrees." A distant rumble broke the stillness. Kale rose, scanning the horizon. "Headlights. Dozens of them. Raiders," he growled. "Dren." The nomads scrambled. Cries rang out, weapons drawn. Kale pulled Celine behind the camp's defensive wall. "Stay here. You're going to fight him alone?" "I've fought worse." He cocked his rifle and ran toward the front line. The battle came fast. Plasma fire lit the sand, screams rang out, and Kale moved like a storm, silent, swift, deadly. He gunned down mercenaries with precision honed by 100 contracts. Celine watched from the ridge, helpless, eyes wide with fear and awe. A blast sent Kale flying, blood on his chest. He staggered up, wounded, breathing hard. Dren stepped from the smoke, tall and cruel in black armor. His rifle aimed at Celine. "You ran far, little bride," Dren sneered. "But the desert always brings you back." Kale raised his own rifle. "Step away." Dren smiled. "Kale roaring. I was hoping to meet the infamous ghost." Their duel began without another word. A blur of movement. Kale rolled, fired, missed, dodged plasma bursts. Dren fought with practiced savagery, pushing Kale back. Kale's shoulder took a hit. Blood soaked into his poncho. He coughed, dropped to one knee. Dren raised his rifle for the final shot. "No!" Celine screamed and threw herself between them. Dren hesitated just a moment too long. Kale surged forward and slammed his blade into Dren's side. The marshal gasped, twisted, and collapsed to the ground. It was over, but Kale was bleeding heavily, eyes flickering. Celine caught him as he fell. No, stay with me." "I told you," he whispered, voice hoarse. "One of us would pay." Tears welled in her eyes. "I won't let you die for me. You already gave me more than I deserved." "No," she whispered, pulling the pendant from her neck. "Not like this." She pressed it to his chest. The desert answered. Bride of the moon, lover of the hunter. The wind died. For a moment, the desert itself seemed to pause, holding its breath as Celine pressed the obsidian pendant into Kale's chest. The moon altar loomed ahead, an ancient platform carved from pale stone, surrounded by the rising cliffs of the Starforged Bluffs. Moonlight bathed the sands in silver. Blood stained Kale's clothes, and his breathing slowed beneath her trembling hands. "No," she whispered again. "You're not dying. Not here. Not now." Behind her, the nomads gathered in silence. The elder woman stepped forward, staff raised, her voice echoing in the stillness. "The Moon Bride has chosen." "She chose love," someone whispered. Celine looked up, her voice firm despite the tears. The prophecy was wrong. The elder nodded slowly. Or perhaps incomplete. Celine cradled Kale against her chest, his pulse faint. With slow determination, she dragged him up the stairs to the center of the altar. Every step was pain. Her injured leg screamed. Her arm shook. But she carried him, inch by inch, until they were both bathed in the altar's light. Symbols beneath the stone shimmered, ancient runes awakening after centuries of silence. The pendant pulsed, responding to the blood, the pain, the sacrifice. Selene stood tall. By the right of the moon bride, and the blood spilled to protect this land, she called into the silence. I claim sanctuary, and I refuse to pay the price. Lightning arced across the sky, white against the stars. Kale stirred beneath her. His wounds shimmered faintly. The blood stopped flowing. A hum rose from the stone, low, deep, and old. The desert answered. The altar, long thought a relic, wasn't just a monument. It was a vault of power, ancient and waiting. A place where choice, not prophecy, carried weight. Kale gasped, coughing, then opened his eyes. What did you do? Selene smiled through her tears. I rewrote the ending. He tried to sit up. She pressed him gently down. Rest. It's over. Dren, he asked. Gone. And the desert's watching now. No one dares touch us here. Kale looked up at her, expression unreadable. You gave up everything to save me. No, she said. I chose something else. Not power. Not a crown. You. He swallowed hard. I don't deserve you. Selene brushed the dust from his cheek. That's the first reason I knew you were worth saving. Below, the nomads watched in reverent silence. Then, slowly one by one, they knelt. The elder raised her arms. The prophecy has changed. The moon bride and her hunter walked together, not in death but in defiance. The wind stirred again, gentler this time. Warm. Underscore. Underscore. Days passed. The desert, once a cruel horizon of endless heat and silence, began to feel like home. The nomads offered shelter, food, and a new name, Shulsaren, the one who chose love. Kale healed, slowly but surely. Selene refused to leave his side. They shared quiet moments by the fire and long nights staring up at twin moons that no longer felt distant. What will you do now? She asked him one evening. He stared into the coals. I could vanish again, hide, live out the rest of my days in peace. Would that make you happy? He looked at her, a faint smile pulling at his lips. Only if you're with me. Selene leaned in, their foreheads touching. Then let's stop running. Together. They kissed, slow, tender, final in its certainty. There were no more walls between them. Just a future neither of them expected, forged not by fate, but by their own choices. Underscore. Underscore. In the months that followed, tales spread across the frontier of the woman who defied an empire's warlord and stood atop the moon altar, of the hunter who'd once been feared but gave up blood for love. Some say they vanished into the dunes. Others claim they still wander the desert, protecting those in need, guardians of the old ways, proof that even the harshest sands can bloom under moonlight. But all who speak of them know one truth. On that cursed frontier moon, beneath silver skies and burning sun, redemption was real, and love, chosen freely, was the most dangerous and powerful force of all.